Thanks for staying with us. So we have with us the Chief Press Secretary of Kwara State, Mr. Rafiu Ajakaye. Good morning, sir. Are you there?
Good morning. I'm here.
So could you give us an update? Yes, we have in the papers that the state has asked all schools to close down while this is being resolved. Could you give us an idea what's being done currently concerning the hijab?
Well, the government is talking to all the sides to ensure that we have a consensus on the question of hijab. Now, I have followed your programs, and I must say I really enjoyed the conversation so far. To be honest, we are brothers, we are sisters in Kwara State, which is why the government is adopting dialogue. The government is having a dialogue with the Christians and the Muslims to see reasons why we have to stick to the law, why we have to allow the Muslim girl child who wishes to wear the hijab to do so. This will be in conformity with the judgment of the Court of Appeal. And of course, it will also be in conformity with the policy of the government, which was done based on the pronouncement of the Court of Appeal. Now, I must make some clarifications based on your conversation. There are two categories of schools in Kwara State, according to the Kwara State education law. We have the private schools, and then we have public schools. We do not have schools that are categorized as missionary schools. Most schools, as we are aware, were taken over in the 70s by the government. In 2013, Christian Association of Nigeria went to court to challenge the status of these schools, that is the ownership. And the court have ruled twice. There was the judgment by the Court of First Instance, which is the High Court of Kwara State. And then there was a judgment by the Appeal Court. In the two instances, the court made it very clear that these schools clearly belong to the government of Kwara State and that they are subject to public policy. Now, we are actually, at this point, not dragging the issue of ownership because it is subject of final judicial adjudication at the Supreme Court. That is clear. However, the question of hijab is another thing entirely because the judgment is declaratory in nature. I'm glad that some of our sisters on here made reference to the issue in Lagos. The Court of Appeal ruled in the Lagos case allowing the Muslim girl child who so wishes to wear the hijab. We've had two different court judgments in Kwara State too. Court of Appeal cases in this case, which also upheld the right of the Muslim girl child to wear the hijab. Now, we are not saying everybody must wear the hijab. That's not what we are saying. What we are saying is that if there is one girl who wants to wear the hijab, such a girl should be allowed to use the hijab. We are not saying it is mandatory for everybody to use the hijab. What we are saying is that the court has made a pronouncement in interpreting Section 38 of the Constitution, which has to do with fundamental human rights.
Right.
And that it is only there for us to stick to that.
Mr. Ajakaye,
but we are not just...
Mr. Ajakaye, therefore, so why do you think Khan is making such a fuss over this issue? Obviously, there's a court judgment, and the state government, there's a law backing this up. So why is Khan making it an issue and insisting that these children shouldn't wear their hijab?
Well, which is why the government is having a conversation with everybody to see reasons why we just have to allow the law to have its way, because we cannot allow anarchy. If we disregard the law, what we may have on our hand is anarchy, and that is not an option. We believe that at the end of the day, everybody will see reasons why we have to stick to the law, why we continue to have healthy conversations amongst ourselves.
Okay, sir. What was the situation until 3 weeks ago when the schools started enforcing no hijab? And what steps did the governor take to abate it? I mean, the committee puts in place. How successful has that committee been in this dialogue you're talking about? Are they agreeing? Is there a dialogue at all that remains conflict in Kwara State?
Of course, I can count up to 12 different meetings held at different levels. There were meetings convened by the Office of the SSG. There were meetings convened by His Excellency the Deputy Governor. And of course, His Excellency the Governor has held several meetings with different stakeholders, particularly Muslim leaders and Christian leaders in the state, on why the government has to take the position it has taken. The government is not seeing it as a Muslim Christian thing. Rather, the government is looking at it as an issue of fundamental human rights, the issue of respecting norm in the world today, that we should allow any girl who wants to wear the hijab anywhere to do so.
Please, I wanted to ask you, because the paper carried it today, Mariam read it as well, that there is a status quo. Mm-hmm. And that according to Khan, is that why don't we just wait for us to have the order? Let the court give us a judgment concerning this case. So would you say, what would you explain is that status quo we are asked to maintain within the schools?
When people have raised this issue on status quo, I'm not a lawyer, but we have the Ministry of Justice here, which comprises very senior lawyers. And what they have said is that when you look at the judgment regarding the hijab, it is declaratory in nature. The government was not settling a dispute as such between two parties. The court was simply stating the position of the Constitution, which means that pronouncement is declaratory in nature. I would like to draw our attention to what happened in the Lagos case. The judgment was given in 2016, and sometimes in 2017, the Lagos State government went back to the appeal court to stay that judgment. And that motion was flatly rejected by the Court of Appeal. And we know that, we know based on that now, we now have hijab being used in Lagos schools. So that judgment, the judgment has to do with interpretation of what the Constitution intends. And so the issue of status quo here, the law today in Nigeria is that any girl child who desires to wear the hijab has the constitutional right to do so. Right. So the status quo is the Court of Appeal judgment regarding the validity of hijab.
Right. Okay.
Yes, sir. So when I was in school growing up, I would hear this, that your right stops where my nose starts. So I do agree with the human rights for everyone. And if you are hijabite, you should wear your hijab wherever you find comfortable. But then there are rules and there are regulations, there are founding principles for different areas. So I just want to give a little background so that you understand where I'm going. When I was growing up, I had friends that would go for Makarantang Alo with. I would look for scarves. Sometimes they would give me theirs. I would not just appear in Makarantang Alo dressed anyhow. I respected that place. I knew that my friends respected that place, and there was a way to dress, and I showed up there that way. I had friends who were Muslims where sometimes I couldn't go into their homes because of the setting where I was dressed. My friends would meet me outside. And sometimes, because I knew I was going to a certain place, I would dress a certain way to show respect. My question is to be careful in having this conversation, that we do not divide, you know, in pushing this law, that we should look for, instead, to bring unity and let people understand and respect each other. And in doing that, we have to let them understand that there are rules and guiding principles of a certain place, and there's a respect you show for that place. It will bring people better together. It will foster respect than what where I think we're headed right now.
All right. CPS, did you get that?
Yeah, I think I mentioned something about the different categories of schools we have in the state. We have private schools, which have their laws and regulations. and we have public schools. The schools we are talking about here are public schools under the law of Kwara State. And going by the court pronouncement, their status being public means that they are subject to public policy.
Right.
Now, the takeover of schools in the 70s, this clarification must be made. In some part of the country, the takeover was 100%. Government not only took over those schools, but they changed the character of the entire schools, including the names. Now, in states like Kwara State, for the sake of honoring the founding fathers of those schools, government elected to keep the names. The fact that the government kept this name does not in any way translate to ownership of those facilities. At least that is the position of the law today, going by the judgment of the High Court and the judgment of the Court of Appeal. So these facilities we are talking about are being funded 100% by taxpayers.
Right. All right.
The teachers that are in these schools are being paid by the government. So these schools belong to the people of Kwara State as far as the law is concerned.
Right.
Now, what we are saying is that let there be tolerance there. Let there be pluralism, which the law allows.
Yes. Okay.
Let us allow any child who desires to wear the hijab to do so, because that is our constitutional right.
All right. Thank you very much, CPS.